Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about adapting to university math. In particular, why people who did extremely well in high school math, like all of you, of course, then come into university and take courses like MAT 188 and 186, and generally struggle a lot. It's actually extremely common to struggle tremendously in 186 and 188 after getting like 98% across the board in your high school math courses. We're going to talk about why that is. Before we do that, and also how to fix it, right? How to stop struggling is the point. It's not much point in in deciding, oh, these are all the reasons why we struggle without fixing it. The whole point is to do well, to excel, to take it from being difficult to being easy. That's what we do here. Um, and actually, where we do that is this school community, U of T and Math. This is the little link thing that you can type in manually, or there is a link in the description that you can click on. You can also get there through our website. There's a link in the description about that. So here is a place. This is where we post lots of videos, instructional videos. You can ask questions, request videos and topics, things like that. Get answers to questions. There are weekly review sessions where we review the previous week's material and some of the upcoming week's material throughout each of the courses, 186, 187, 188, not in that order, of course. There are office hours. You can drop in and ask questions. And there's exam review. So we do big, long review sessions before each midterm and each final, several of them to make sure, so several different time sections to make sure that everyone can attend. And also before the final, we go over all sorts of old material based on past finals and stuff that has happened and midterms that has happened in this course. And we go in huge amounts of detail, do tons of problems, tons of practice, cumulative review stuff. So that is all here at this school community. Also like and subscribe, etc. If you enjoy the videos, that is always appreciated. So, in what is the reason you were so good in high school? Why is university so tough? This is again, like I said, a basically ubiquitous experience. Almost everyone from high school, and the people who don't struggle, basically the people who don't struggle from high school math coming to university are generally the people who did like contest or something, who did a ton of contest and outside of school math for since they were kids usually. They generally have a pretty good time. But anyone who relied on our high school system, especially here in Ontario and in Canada, to prepare them for university math, tend to have a terrible experience. And that's not surprising. I had a terrible experience in high school math. I hated math in high school. And then I loved it when I went to university. I became a math major. I did my math major at U of T. And that's how I became a TA for MAT 186 and 187 and 188. Again, not in that order. And was a TA for years and saw all of this stuff happening, saw cohort after cohort of students coming in, all bright-eyed and fresh-faced and keen and smart and ready to go with their high school grades and sort of false sense of security that our high school system gives you, and then have this crash and burn horribleness in first year because you're just not prepared. And that's how I started doing this, is I was running programs through the faculty teaching people the 186, 187, 188 material. And actually ended up running a course over the summer, coordinating a course where I specifically basically just reviewed all of high school math, all the high school material for the incoming students who are coming to first year, but from kind of a university perspective. This is what we're going to be talking about. This list of stuff here and this list of stuff here, these are the differences between high school and university math and the approaches that we have to take to high school versus university math. So a lot of what we do in the community and through the videos is basically is review stuff, teaching you stuff that is technically high school material, but we teach it kind of in a university way, and that bridges the gap, gets you ready to go with the university material, which we teach you as well, of course. So what is going on in high school versus university? Why is our education system so terrible? And by the way, I should say one more note before we dive into the material. I've taught a lot of high school math. I've been teaching high school math for the last, I don't know, at least 10 years. University math even longer than that, actually, because I started as a TA. I've taught at schools and after school programs and tutoring and all of this stuff. And you see from all these different angles, especially working at schools and seeing other teachers and stuff like this, you see what is wrong with our education system, and seeing it on both ends is really interesting. Seeing on the one hand what they're doing in high schools, and on the other hand, what is happening to the kids when they come into first year university. You get to see on both ends of the process and can really diagnose what is going wrong and how to fix it. And it's really horrible. What they do in school, the first thing is, and this is a term. I didn't make this up. This is an education term. It's called bar lowering. This is when basically in our education system there's a lot of pressure on teachers to have high grades, right? Parents really want their kids to get into university. You guys all know this, right? Universities are so competitive. You need mid 90s at least to even be considered, yada yada, all this stuff, right? So if the grades, there's this kind of unwritten rule in in high school. I know this from working in schools that you're not allowed to give anyone less than kind of an 85. If people sort of do as they're told, if they do, they hand in all the stuff that you give them, you have to give them at least a certain minimum grade that they need to be competitive for universities. Usually it's higher than that. Private schools, it's a lot higher. Bar lowering is goes a little bit step further than that. It's when the material is hard and kids are stressed, and so they go to their parents and say the material is hard, and the parents come to the school and they say the material is hard. What's going on with this? And teachers lower it, right? They make it easier. They water it down. They remove topics. Teachers are constantly doing this. You see this when you're teaching university because students just haven't heard of certain things, right? They come in, they've been doing these kind of cherry-picked problems. And the reason is, and then so they're unprepared for university. But the reason is that the parents don't want kids to have any stress these days for some reason. I don't know what it is. They just have decided you're never supposed to be stressed in school. And that sounds nice, right? People love their kids. I understand why they're doing that, but the problem, as someone who, has done an entire university degree in math, which is a pretty difficult subject, is that you learn during a process like that without stress there's no learning, right? Learning involves stress. Learning involves pushing yourself. It involves struggling. Productively is a phrase that people like to use in education and in university education, right? You have to be pushing your boundaries. If you only ever do easy problems, you only ever do problems that you know how to solve, right? You can get it really quickly. You're just not going to learn anything. A very famous math teaching prof at U of T actually was famous for saying that, right? You just don't learn anything by doing easy stuff. So in high school, they lower the bar, they make the material easy so that people can do it without much of a difficult time. Without any stress, without really having to try too much, you don't learn a lot of stuff. And then what happens is you get to university, and you're probably seeing this, depending on when you're watching this video, how far you're into 186 or 188 probably. The material is much harder in university. It is a lot harder, and it is a struggle. Every university math course you ever take is a struggle from beginning to end. And if you're prepared for that, if you've been doing difficult material in high school and learning how to cope with the stress of not understanding something immediately, right? Then you're going to be prepared for this. You're going to be able to it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be doable. You're going to get it, right? But if you've been used to the bar being lowered until everyone is doing it without too much trouble and there's no stress and you don't really have to struggle, then you're simply not prepared for this. And that's where things go off the rails. Or I should say that's where things start to go off the rails. As you can see, they continue to go off the rails for like 5 bullet points down here. What's the next one? Disguising non-performance. This is another industry phrase. I did not make this up. This is so common in the education industry. They have a term for this. This is when the students haven't learned anything and teachers find ways or give them ways to get the correct answer on the test anyway, to get the marks high. And this is stuff like calculators and formula sheets. You probably had this in your high school. I was shocked when I got to university to find out, and I started doing math at U of T, to find out that you don't get calculators. They said, just do the math, do the arithmetic on paper by hand. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that you're supposed to do this. I also was shocked maybe a week later after being forced to do it by hand constantly without a calculator that I could do it and I got really good at it really fast. It's one of those things where you don't realize you can do something until you're kind of forced to do it because the calculators have been a crutch for you all this time. Formula sheets as well. There are no formula sheets in U of T Eng math. There's no formula sheets in the math courses that I took in my math major, right? You're actually supposed to learn this stuff. If you need a formula sheet, right? It's you haven't learned the formulas. You don't understand them. We're going to be seeing, and this is the theme of everything that we do in the school community and all of the teaching, is that if we really understand stuff, there are ways to not need the formula sheet. If you need the formula sheet, you don't know it. You don't need this thing, right? And this only works for cherry-picked questions. You're taking, and this is what they do in high school, they give you these easy cherry-picked questions where you take some problem, right? You take some numbers, you plug it into a formula, some numbers come out, you write those on the page, and they give you a mark and say, hey, they learned, right? You didn't learn anything if you're doing this, right? You're just plugging numbers from one place into another place and then writing them down. You're transferring them around. This is a side topic that I'm not going to get into because it's a huge tangent. But this is one of the reasons, I'll make a separate video on this. This is one of the reasons why people now, recent grads, are showing up in the workplace and not being able to do the things that are asked of them and crashing and burning and having stress leave and breakdowns and stuff because so many education programs, and this is one of the great things about engineering math, engineering generally and math generally, is that they're these difficult programs that force you to think and force you to sort of figure things out and work independently and cope with difficult material. When you get to the workplace, you will actually be very capable because you learned this during your degree. If you do an easier degree, if you do one where you're just kind of maybe at other schools, there are some where you just sort of copy stuff from one sheet to another. I don't want to name particular ones because people will get mad at me, but then you wind up in the workforce. Everyone I know who's hiring people right now or hiring recent grads, they are losing their minds about how they can't work independently because they've just been copying stuff from one sheet to another for their entire undergrad. They never had to think independently. So the formula sheets and calculators, you think they're your friend. They're actually a crutch. They're actually holding you back from developing your abilities in your mind and your capacity and making you a good, productive worker who is going to go and have a great career and get promotions and all sorts of money and cool stuff like this. And as we can see in university, by contrast, and again, this does depend on the program, and then use university in Eng Math at U of T and Math at U of T, there are no calculators, no formula sheets, right? You're expected to actually know the material and go onto the tests and go into the tests and perform, right? That is the thing. And we are going to show you, a lot of people think this is impossible. I've been showing students for years, for like 10 years now, how to do this, that it is not impossible, that we absolutely can do this. And actually, once you learn how to do this and kind of commit to the fact that you're going to do this, sort of accept it and lean into it, it actually, you see that it's a lot easier, it's a lot better, it's a lot more fun. You really understand things, the kind of light goes off in your head, and you go into exams with complete total confidence, just 100% confidence, right? That no matter what question they throw at you, you can handle it. You don't have to worry about stumpers, you don't have to worry about particular problems coming up. That's what real deep understanding does for you. And that's how math majors do it. That's how every math major, every person who is a math person does this. And that's why when I teach these courses, and try to help engineers sort of learn to think in the university math way. That's what we're focusing on is understanding, not memorization. And it's a different world. It's a really beautiful feeling when you go into an exam and have zero stress. It's incredible. Next thing they do in high schools is grade inflation. I'm sure you guys have seen this as well, right? There's, like I said, I've been on this side of it. I've been a teacher in high schools where the marks on the tests were not great. They were 80% or something like this, or maybe lower than this, right? If they're lower than 80, you get yelled at by the principal. But if they're around 80, that's not good. They're supposed to be in the 90s, right? So the principal comes into your office and says, "Oh, the parents aren't happy about the test. You know, what happened? Why are the grades so low?" You have to give them a retest. You have to give them a retest. The grades are too low. It must mean something was going wrong. There was something in the water that day. The kids were tired. Who knows what's happening, right? The ascension of Mercury or something was off. They all didn't do well, so we have to have a retest. So you give them a retest, and it's basically the same material with different numbers and see how well they do again, right? I've heard about teachers giving them exactly the same material again. I've heard about teachers giving students the answers basically on tests. I'll tell you horror stories throughout the course of the videos and the review sessions and the exam review and stuff like this, the weeklies. I will rant about all of this stuff, I promise. That and also extra assignments, right? At the end of the term, if they've had 2, 3 retests on every test all year and they still have a 92 and they need a 96 for their program, and the students will tell you exactly what mark they need for their program, you give them extra assignments, right? You get to the end and you say, okay, here's some extra problems, take these and do them, and then hand them in, and then you'll have your 96, right? And if they do it, right, if they're willing to do that, put in that work, then the schools feel that there's something okay about just like giving them the grade for this, right? And this is across the board. This is everywhere. This is endemic. It's just like every school does this. And it's just the way it is in our education system. Problem is that gets you into your university program. But the problem is that then you get to university and we have no second chances. This does not work this way. If the average on your first MAT 186 test is a 46, it will stay a 46. They're not going to go and let you redo it. They're not going to give the entire class a retest. That does not happen. They will say, well, do better on the next one. Study harder, work harder, learn more, do better on the next one. You have to remember that you guys are engineers. You are engineers. You're going to go out and build bridges and design planes and things which if they break, if they're not made well, people will die. Lots and lots and lots of people will die if the stuff that you make does not work. They are not going to give you extra marks. They're not going to give you 3 chances to write a test just because the grades are low and people are upset about this. And as this is one of the last points, I don't know where it went. The parents in university, your parents can't come in and get angry. I've literally had this experience as a high school teacher where the parents come in and are furious at the principal, and the principal comes in and is furious at you, and then you basically told that you have to raise the grades or you're going to be fired, and then they'll raise them for you. Stuff. This happens all the time, right? Parents have a lot of say. Getting angry sort of makes changes. Oh, here it is. Parents can't complain and fix it. Um, right below, don't care if grades are low. But by the way, I shouldn't say they don't care if grades are low. They get upset if the grades are low. Um, I know people at U of T engineering faculty who are very upset when the grades are low. But what they do, when I say they don't care, what I mean is they don't go and fix it. They don't just go and give you a retest. They don't find a way to feed you the grades the way that they do in high school, right? They tell you work harder for that. They offer you more review sessions and offer you more extra help. I did this myself as a TA. I was the person offering extra help to people holding review sessions, holding extra help sessions, letting people come and ask questions, getting them prepared for the tests. We do lots of that. What we don't do, what we never did, and this is again, I think that sort of high school mentality, is when you come after the test and say, "Oh, I think I deserve more grades here. I think I deserve more grades here." I remember I had a student who I'd never seen him before in tutorial, and he showed up after the test and he said, "Oh, I should get more grades for this. I should get," and just complained and wanted to get more grades because he complained. I said, "No, come before the test. Don't come after the test. Learn and perform." Right? In university, they do not care if the grades are low. Right? They are not going to, I mean, they want them to be high. They try to help you. So they care before the test about making the grades high. After the test, they do not care. After the test, the grade is what it is. And this brings us to our next point, which is the big thing, the big sort of overall pattern that happens in high school is that when they do all of these things, the teachers look good because the grades are high, the parents are happy, the students learn basically nothing, right? You learn very little in high school. Again, I'm saying this from many, many years of experience. People with 98s coming into MAT 186, 188, and not knowing the quadratic formula, literally things like this. And we're going to talk about all of this stuff in due course. But when this happens, right, again, you're happy getting into the program, but when you get to university, it is a recipe for disaster, right? Students are unprepared, struggle, fail. This is a thing that happens every year. It's really, really bad. People who have worked for 4 years to get into their program, 4 years, and are so happy about it. It's really heartbreaking to see. Or they're elated to be in U of T engineering, right? This shining, amazing program. They're going to go off and be engineers. And then they fail the first test, and you see them crying in the hall outside, holding their papers. They look like they got hit by a truck, right? They don't know what happened. They're just in tears, broken, understandably, because they've been aiming for this for so long. They worked so hard to get here. And now just their whole world falls apart. Why? Because the high schools were setting you up for this, right? They don't think past getting you out the door with the parents happy, right? They just, the grades are high, everyone got in their program, everyone's happy, they look good. And then you go to university and your world falls apart and you don't know why, and it's not your fault because again, they have been giving you this false sense of security. So what people have to do, but the good news is I can tell you again from experience that people absolutely can do this. They can reorient themselves and get on track to do well in university eng math and in engineering generally and become great engineers and go off into the world. I've been doing this for long enough that my former students are out in the world being engineers, succeeding right now because basically, not basically, because totally, they bought into this. They bought into the university way of doing it. I've seen people who, from the get-go, just adopted this way. And by the way, what is this in a nutshell down here? Deep understanding, not memorization, right? The profs, I can again promise you this from experience, being on teaching teams, the profs bend over backwards to make tests that you can't memorize your way through. They want you to really, 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 really understand stuff. And if you do really, really, really understand stuff on a deep level, which is what we do in all of the instructional videos and the review sessions, if you really understand it, then you have zero stress going into the exam. You do extremely well going into the exam. You do well in the course, right? If you try to memorize your way through, you will not succeed. You will be very, very lucky to get a 51 average and get your ring somehow. But it's kind of miraculous when people do this, right? You have to actually understand. And if you're thinking about this, wondering what do they mean? I memorized it. That means I understand it. That's not what that means. That's what high school has kind of told you that means. It's not what it means. This is a new world of understanding what understanding is, of learning how to learn. That I think actually was the slogan of my of my course, the summer prepare people for first year course. So basically, if you buy into this, and this was stressful, this is new, this is a thing you haven't done before, right? But if you're curious, if you like learning, if you want to understand things, and you have what they call a growth mentality, you want to learn how to do things that you don't think that you can do, that you feel like you can't do, right? Then I promise you are very, very well positioned to go and be a successful University of Toronto engineering student and then a professional engineer out in the world doing well. Again, I have students who have come full circle, who are doing, work, they're working, doing masters now. But these are the people who bought into this, who wanted to learn and who struggled productively, who went and said, I want to understand everything completely. I didn't understand it the first time. I didn't understand it the second time. I didn't understand it the third time. I kept coming for extra help, going to the sessions, staring at it, thinking about it, playing around with it, doing whatever it takes to get that real deep understanding, which does come eventually, not immediately though, right? In high school, they want this instant gratification. I've done this as I've seen this as a teacher before, right? In high school, if students don't understand something immediately, parents say, "Oh, that can't." And this is the bar lowering, the first thing we talked about. If students don't get it immediately, parents say, "Oh, that's too hard. It shouldn't be on the curriculum," and they make you cut it. I've seen this many, many times. They give you some watered down version of this, right? And it's so hilarious to a math major because you know that in math you never get anything the first time, right? It's this process of staring at things for hours, days, weeks until it really sinks in and clicks, right? You have to start at the beginning of the course and work consistently all the way to the exam. It's not like other subjects where you can cram the night before. I took some humanities courses in my undergrad. There were courses where you study the night before and you get an A, right? It's not like that in math. It takes time. It takes persistence. It has to work its way into your brain. You're building neural nets or whatever it is. I'm not a neuroscientist, but there's something like that. Like a part of your brain is growing to do this stuff, right? That's how difficult it is. That's how kind of alien it is to our brains. It's not like learning language or something. We need to be working consistently and pushing ourselves. And you need to know that if you push through, if you don't give up when you don't understand something the first time, right, you will get it eventually. You have to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. But then you will, like many of the success stories that I've seen over the years, you can go out and be a very successful, very fantastic engineer. But the biggest thing that stands in people's way is they kind of can't give up on the high school way of doing it. They can't accept that you have to understand and learn stuff deeply. They just want to memorize their way through. These people fail and drop almost always and are just kind of out of the program after the first year. Okay, so this is the overview of the high school versus university approach. The next thing we're going to do, because you might be saying this is some nice, bullet points. You haven't showed me any math, right? How do I even know you know how to do math? How do I know you're just not making this up? The next thing we're going to do is look at a bunch of examples of the things that they do in high school math versus how you should do it in university. Actual topics. We're not gonna explain it in this video. There are separate videos where we talk about in detail how to actually do these things the university way. But I want in this one to give you some examples of the things that the badnesses they were giving you in high school, the things they were telling you how to do in a bad, lazy, kind of sloppy, cheating shortcut way, and then the way that we actually do it in university, which is built on understanding and deep conceptual knowledge, and learning how to use the machinery and the tools of mathematics to be able to solve any problem instead of just memorizing some stuff. That is next up now.